Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and in this video I'm going to fly you around and we'll explore my neighborhood some more. And I'm going to tell you two of my flying stories when I had my Cessna 170, and then at the end I'll throw in a poem. But first, let's take a look at this. Now, one interesting thing I noticed this morning, there's a haze drifting across the valley. I've never noticed that before, but it's just like, well, I didn't know if it was from the sprinkler systems or from the crop dusters spraying, but it doesn't look too healthy. So I don't know I've never seen that before. This was taken when I was living in the HOA. But since that time, I have moved out to the area where the haze is. And so when I take my dogs out to do their business at night, I take my Harbor Freight high-intensity LED flashlight, and this is what I see when I turn it on. And as you can see, there's a lot of dust in the air, and so I think that's probably what we're seeing even in the distance. Well, maybe not on this video, but in that other one. And so people come to Arizona for their health, and there must be something in the dust. All right, well, let's get going here. Oh, by the way, sometimes you might hear a rooster crowing in these videos. That's because my recording studio is in my fifth wheel, which is parked next to my son's chicken pen. So that's where I am now, and that's the best I can do. All right, so here I'm flying along because I want to check the gates down here to see if it says no trespassing, because I like to make sure that if my drone goes down somewhere, then I can go get it. And I've had a drone go down, so once that happens to you, then after that you kind of a little more conscious about it. Okay, let's go with the first story. The first story is, if you remember in my last video, and if you haven't looked at it, I'll put a link to it in the descriptions. But anyway, my friend Tom, him and his wife were really sweet folks at our church, and Tom was a big guy and heavy. And so when I got my Cessna 150, he was always glad to go flying with me. And so we did a lot of flying together. And in fact, in the last video where I talked about trying to take off with him and me both in the plane, eventually, when I got my Cessna 170, then he bought the 150. And the sad part is, when he went out to take his first lesson, the instructor asked him his weight, and they figured it out. And with the instructor plus him in a plane, it was overweight for what was the limit for the Cessna 150. So anyway, well, that's another story, and we'll get to that. Let's get to the story that I'm telling you about today. First of all, I got my Cessna 170, and the pastor at the church I went to, he's the one that got me into flying, and he had a Bonanza V-tail. And so I helped him with a lot of things that he was doing, and he encouraged me to get my plane and got me into flying. So anyway, he was out at the airport one day, and he was doing something. He had his cowling up, and he was working on something, and then when he got it all put down, well, then he did a run-up. In other words, he just ran the engine full bore, just to check and see if it was working. And he heard this clacking sound, and what happened was the engine, the power of that Bonanza it's a 250 horsepower plane engine, and it sucked his toolbox into the prop. That's how much suction there is around that prop. So the prop needed to be worked on, and the closest place was in Boise, Idaho, and I was in Pasco, and he asked me if I could carry it down in my plane. And so I said, sure, I'll give it a try. So what I had to do in my little Cessna 170 is I had to take the back seat out, and then I had to remove the little partition that separates the cabin from the tail section just in the hull. And then very carefully, because it's a long prop, you stand it up, it's 6 feet or more. And in the middle, it was an adjustable pitch prop, so it had the gear configuration and so forth in the middle. So it was a heavy, big object, but if I was real careful, I could open the passenger door and then come up from underneath. And I may have had to take out the passenger seat to do this, and then I slid it in, got it to where it was almost the full length of the hull section behind the passenger cabin, plus the passenger cabin. And I don't remember for the details now, but I got the passenger seat back in, and then I had to snag it down really good, because if you hit turbulence, you don't want a prop flipping around inside the plane. So I tied it down really good, the best I could. But then I had all this metal in the back, and so I needed something, some weight to keep the center of gravity. And so I called up my friend Tom, and of course he was always willing to go fly. So I used him. I don't know how much he weighed, but it was way over 200 pounds. And so with him and me in the front and the metal in the back, then we had the center of gravity pretty close to what it should be. Of course, we were guessing, but it worked. So we took off early one morning, and the sun was in our eyes as we flew from Pasco, Washington to Boise, Idaho. And we dropped it off, and then they did the reworking of the prop, and then we flew back. And then when it was all done, well, then he flew down there with me again, and we put it all back in the plane and took it home and gave it to the pastor, and the prop worked just fine. So anyway, that was using my friend Tom as ballast to keep the center of gravity where it should be. And then another time I had a situation where we had a young man in our church who had Crohn's disease, and he was way, way overweight. And in fact, I made him a bicycle because he couldn't ride a regular bicycle. And so I might have a picture of that if I can find it. So anyway, he wanted to go for a ride. So I decided, okay, well, what I had to do in order for him to buckle into the back seat, I had to fly up to Omak or Okanagan area up there. In northern Washington, there was an aircraft boneyard, and I got an extension for the seat belt in the back. And so then I flew back down, and the day came for the ride, and so it was very difficult to be able to get him into the plane. But he made it into the back seat, and then we buckled in everything, got him all settled in. And then guess who went with us to keep the center of gravity? Yep, my friend Tom. He sat up front, and so we had a little more ballast in the front to match what was in the back. And so that was really neat, because my friend, I don't know if he's even still alive now, but he enjoyed that flight. What we did was we took off and we climbed up to well over 10,000 feet. And I love flying in the clouds, and so there was a bunch of clouds, and a big bank of clouds. And so you heard about the guy that put all of his money into a cloud bank, saving for a rainy day. You may not have heard that one before. Anyway, we got over there, and we had all kinds of variety of clouds to fly through. We had holes to fly through. We had columns to fly around. We had just all kinds of things. You couldn't do much aerobatics, but you could dive and go down through, like if there was a hole in a cloud somewhere, you could dive and go down through it, and then very carefully pull out of the dive. So as it turned out, we had a wonderful flight, and my friend really, really enjoyed every minute of it. And so thanks to my friend Tom, we had the center of gravity where it should have been. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about what happened to the Cessna 150 that my friend Tom bought. when he bought it, and of course he went out for his first lesson, and the instructor said, well, you can't, I can't teach you how to fly this because you're too heavy. So he and his wife were the sweetest people that you'll ever meet. So anyway, I think she probably decided that she would also learn to fly, and then that would not have wasted the $6,000 that they had just spent on an airplane. And so she took lessons, and I spent a lot of time helping her out because she just really wasn't a pilot type person. She was a nurse and very, very sweet lady. But anyway, I think she was just doing it for her husband. And so she finally, I was at the airport the day that she did her 3 takeoffs and landings. And those are the first solo flights. And so it was a blessing. And then she got her pilot certificate. And then eventually, they didn't keep went from me to them and then to the instructor. But the instructor wasn't the smartest guy on earth. If you ever check the oil in a vehicle, remember you pull the dipstick out and you wipe it off and you put it back in and then you pull it out again. But he wasn't doing that. He was just pulling the dipstick out. Well, where the dipstick went in, the oil would, what do they call it, I can't remember the exact word, but anyway, it would weep up and crawl up on the stick, so it always looked like it had oil in it, but it didn't. If you didn't wipe it off, you'd find out the oil was low. So anyway, that kind of messed up the engine, and I don't know whatever happened to it. Okay, so there's a couple of stories. Now, how about a poem? This poem is about flying, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. I wrote it shortly after I got my pilot certificate. And as you listen to it, you might come to understand a little more about why I love to fly so much. It's called Where the Birds Go When They Die. The morning light of an April day is more than mere routine. With springtime dew and life reclaimed, in the crisp, moist air birds fly and sing. It was in April when I took my wings, alone in the sky of blue, and learned to soar and play and dance. With the clouds and birds I flew. Together we'd climb a cumulus bank and slide through a valley of mist, and fall from a crest for 1,000 feet, then a new cloud find to kiss. With the green below and the blue all around, the sky made a welcome home, and gave me a place to rest and play, and clouds through which to roam. And all the birds did gladly share. They seemed to know, like I, the reverence due the gift of flight, the chance to climb the sky. And one day I wondered, all those birds, so many sing and fly, as many as I see alive, where do they go to die? I find them not on the grassy slopes, nor at the water's shore. Yet there has to be a place for birds whose wings can fly no more. Thousands of birds in the trees and air, but very few are found, whose age or health have stilled their wings and left them snared by solid ground. But every bird that tastes the wind and knows the thrill of a stall must face that disappointing fact that's common to us all. And my wings and I must someday too climb up to our very last flight, and see the earth so far below and the sun above so bright. We may not reckon the time at hand and know what lies ahead, as we sing with birds and dance with clouds and dazzle our spinning head. But it will come, and when it does, my heart I plan to fill with all the memories the sky can spare, till the day my wings lie still. And of all the secrets I may have learned that were hidden in the sky, I'll expect to find when my wings lie still, where the birds go when they die. Well, I want to thank you for watching. and God bless.